In the excitement of getting your job in Japan as an English teacher, there are so many things which can get lost in the mix, especially when you have to sign the contract before you come to Japan. Many people have become blindsided the moment they arrive in Japan, and then they notice that what they signed for is not what exactly they got. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you certain clauses and phrases that you should look for in a contract so that you know if it's a good contract for you or not. My name is Matilda, and welcome to my YouTube channel. And this is Teach in Japan with Matilda. In today's video, we'll be covering things like your contract type and term, then the working hours, which could be your overtime as well as late night premiums if you have to work late into the night. Then we also look at your salary, your pay schedule, and the deductions, then your paid leave and school breaks, as well as social insurance, which is called Shakai Hoken in Japanese. We'll also discuss your housing, transport, and other benefits, as well as your probational period, termination of contracts, as well as renewal rules. And the last thing we have to talk about are red flags to look out for. So, first of all, let's talk about contract types and terms. So, we're going to look at your employment status. So, we have got fixed term contracts as well as indefinite. And then most roles, they are fixed term, which is like a 1 year contract or 2 year contract. Then the indefinite, that's self explanatory. Then we have the 5 year rule, which says after 5 years of continuous fixed term employment with the same employer, you can apply to convert from a fixed term to an indefinite contract. This is where they don't have to keep asking you every year whether you want to renew or not. And the employer must notify eligible staff of this right. It is your right. If you work for 5 years continuously for a company, you are allowed to ask them to change it to an indefinite contract. Then let's look at your working hours, overtime, as well as late night work. So Japan's baseline is 8 hours per day, which will amount to 40 hours per week. And work beyond that time is considered overtime. And late night premiums, that's when you work from 10 to 5 in the morning. And they also include extra premium on top of any overtime. And usually this happens if you work for an Eikaiwa and maybe they ask you to help with an event and you work overnight. And your contract should also spell out your scheduled hours, which is your preparation time. So some companies do not calculate your prep time into your working time. If your classes start at 4, let's say you work for Eikaiwa, if you start at 4 and you arrive at the class at 2, some companies do not calculate those 2 hours as working time. So depending on what your company, considers is working time, then, that's how you also have to work around your day. And some companies also include travel time during their working hours, and some do not. So all of this is something that you have to ask and check in your contract. And if you feel like it's not been clearly, defined and stated in the contract, please feel free to ask them before you sign. Don't get too excited and sign the contract and then think you can come and now renegotiate the terms when you're now in Japan. It becomes more difficult if you don't understand what exactly they mean. The next thing I want us to talk about is the salary, your pay schedule, and deductions. So there is something which they call a monthly base salary. And the monthly base salary, that's sort of like your everyday amount, the money that you're supposed to get without any special money is paid on top, which could be your transport reimbursement, or for example, like in my company, if I do not take a day off, like if I do not call in sick, I get a bonus for full attendance for the whole month. So the base salary is the money which is not affected by whether you were absent or not. And you should also make sure that you check on when your payday is. because this will also help you to be able to figure out how you're going to negotiate contracts for other things when you arrive in Japan. Let's say your phone contract. If you want to get a phone in Japan, you can talk to the network providers on when you can pay, and you can always push the date towards the time you get paid. And also check if you're eligible for any bonuses. And with the bonus, some companies do not pay and they're not obligated to pay. But you have to check if you're eligible for a bonus or not. And check if there are any housing deductions, if the company is going to give you free housing or they will be deducting the housing fee from your salary. And you must also understand that there's statutory deductions. These are mandatory deductions. This is, for example, your income tax and your pension and your health insurance, which are included in this thing that we call the Shakai Hoken. You need to pay them, and these payments usually become more significant in your second year. And also make sure to check if your company pays for your Shakai Hoken. Some companies do not pay, and some companies will pay for your social insurance. So if your company does not pay for you, you should know so that if you come here, you will be prepared to pay those premiums by yourself. The next thing we're going to be talking about is your paid leave, the national holidays, as well as school breaks. Now, the annual paid leave by law is at least 10 paid days after 6 months of continuous work. And this is if you get them if you have at least 80% attendance at work. And this increases with service up to 20 days. So the longer you stay with the company, your paid days become, they pick up more. And your contract should not go below this statutory floor. So the lowest is 10 days pay 6 months, which means at the end of the year, you have about 20 days. And sick leave is not guaranteed by law. Some companies do not have a sick leave clause, which means if you get sick and you miss the day, that money for that day is deducted from your salary. And school closures and breaks, this mainly applies to people who are going to become ALTs. It also clarifies whether you get paid during the summer break or winter break. Some companies are known not to pay during those breaks. You have to know this stuff. So please be sure to check. Social insurance, the Shakai Hoken. This is a very bitter pill to swallow. Sorry, because the money is quite, expensive, and most people do not want to pay those monies. And unfortunately, health insurance is not something you can choose to have or not to have. It's mandatory, as well as pension and the income tax. In fact, everything, including the residence tax. So let's talk about social insurance. Full-time employees are generally enrolled into an employee health insurance, which is usually maybe held by the company, and they also opted into the pension system. And this is what they call the Shakai Hoken, with premiums being split between the employer and the employee. That's what is supposed to happen according to the law. But some companies do not do that. The employee has to pay all of this from their own pocket, but actually they're supposed to be a split. The company either pays half and the employee pays half. Now let's move on to your benefits: housing, training, and commuting. For housing, if a company housing is confirmed, then you need to confirm the rent so that you don't get a surprise when you arrive in Japan. And you also have to ask the company if they pay something called key money, and also if the company is going to pay the deposit. Because if they do not pay for that, it means you have to save that money from wherever you're coming from and paid in Japan. And usually moving in costs can be as much as equivalent to 2000 US dollars. So you have to ask if the company will pay for those monies, the rent, the moving in costs, the key money, and the deposit. Then some companies will give you like a very rudimentary, they'll give you rudimentary furniture to use, like they'll give you small table, fridge, microwave, and the stove vent. You have to check if the companies provide. If they do not provide, it means you have to save money to come to Japan and then buy those things. Then the training is also something that you have to pay for. When the company trains you, it's not for free. So some companies will train you when you arrive. They do not require you to pay the money upfront, but they will deduct it from your salary as you start getting paid. They don't take it as a lump sum, but they might split it into maybe 10 payments or a whole year of them just getting bits and pieces of the money that they used for training. And there's something, especially the commuting part. That's where some companies, they, for example, when worked for Pepe Kids Club, they reimbursed my transport money to the last cent. You just have to make sure that at the end of the month, you get your transport sheet and you fill out all the monies that you used. And this will be verified by the supervisor. So, no, you cannot cheat on that. And some companies have a cap on how much you can get reimbursed, especially if an ALT and you drive and you have the company car. They might tell you that the cap is 20,000 yen, which means even if you use more than 20,000 yen, they won't give you um, any money after 20,000 yen. So be sure to make sure that they clarify on that part. Then the probation, termination, and renewal. So probations in Japan can range from 1 to 6 months, and most commonly it's about 3 months. And during this time, your salary might be a little bit different from someone who is now on a fixed term contract. You have to ask the differences, and if they tell you that the difference is in the hourly rate, make sure that they clarify that, and also that they let you know when they do start your fixed term contract. Then also notice and termination. They also have to talk about the length of time that you need to give for you to give the notice if you want to leave the company, or the notice they also have to give you if they want to terminate your contract. And renewal, which means that many contracts are not indefinite. They're fixed term, which means it could be a 1 year contract. The company should tell you in advance, and then they ask you whether you want to renew or not. It's a choice. And remember, there's that 5 year conversion, where if you work for 5 years continuous for one company, you are entitled to ask for them to make your job indefinite. Then let's talk about red flags and how to negotiate. First of all, you have to watch out for unpaid mandatory meetings or prep, which push your time to above 40 hours. So let's say your company already makes you work 40 hours. Those 40 hours is just, teaching time. And then they tell you that you have to arrive 2 hours before, do this for prep. That means your working hours can go up to 50 hours. And then the 10 hours are unpaid. That's a red flag. That's not allowed by the Japan labor standards law. And also check things like vague phrases like hours as needed. This means they're saying your hours are based on how they need you, which means you could go above the stipulated 40 hours that you're supposed to work. And if they also say location anywhere in Japan, you have to ask them. They might make you go to places where, it's more earthquake prone, places like Tokushima. They might make you go and work in Fukushima, where there was the tsunami and then there was that nuclear reactor. And right now they're still trying to repopulate that place because not a lot of people want to be exposed to the nuclear radiation. And then refusal for them to enroll eligible staff into the Shakai Hoken. So if you are like a fixed term full-time teacher and they do not want to put you into Shakai Hoken, that's not legal. It means your company is probably a black company, is what they're called in Japan. And late night Eikaiwa shifts without extra premiums on top. If you're made to work between 10 and 5 in the morning without any extra money, no, that's a red flag. So, special notes that I'm going to give you, if you're an ALT or a dispatch ALT, please clarify your base school. As you have to move around in different schools, you need at least one base school where you know, where you can be like, this is my main school. And also ask about split schools, desk warming expectations. By desk warming expectations, I mean if you're supposed to be in the office at a certain school, they should tell you what you're supposed to do, where they're going to be helping the Japanese staff there, whether you have to prep for other classes. They should tell you, because some ALTs do not want to sit at the desk. They'd rather go out and maybe go to the combini and stuff like that. So have them state what they expect for you to do during your desk warming activities. And also ask about makeup Saturdays, especially if it's going to be like there's going to be like a school festival. Ask them if that's paid for. Then with Eikaiwa, you should check Saturdays and Sunday shifts. And if they're back to back 40 to 50-minute lessons, and if you have to do any sales jobs during your teaching. If you go to an international school, you should also ask for benefits, like, for example, a relocation, if they're going to pay for your relocation fee. If this video helped you decode about your contract, please give me a little like, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment. I really appreciate you guys, your feedback. It gives me that motivation to do more. I really, really enjoy going through the comments and trying my best to answer your questions. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to put my sources in the description box as well. Thank you very much. Bye.